Man is not born of original sin. Xiefeng. Is nature good or evil? This controversial issue, which has been debated for thousands of years, finally gets answered correctly from Life Changyuan. Good and evil are not the properties of nature, but are determined by material logic. In other words, when the material content is achieved through the content of consciousness, there will be the distinction between good and evil. Enkuan Buddha of Life Changyuan said this: there is no right or wrong or good or evil on the level of consciousness. Consciousness only reflects the results achieved by material logic. Right or wrong and good or evil is determined by material logic. Meeting the material logic that creates the totality is right and good. Destroying the material logic that creates totality is wrong and evil. Therefore, from the point of view of pure consciousness, on that level, there is no right or wrong. However, if consciousness appears and uses the content of consciousness to achieve material content, then the consciousness can be right or wrong and good or evil, which is determined by the material logic that achieves the content. For example, the information stored in a computer is binary, whether good or bad. Does not have a right or wrong, or good or evil nature. The right or wrong and good or evil is the result of the application of the information on a physical level. Likewise, scientific principles can improve the lives of people, but can also manufacture weapons to destruct human life. Similarly, on the consciousness level of the universe, that is, Alaya consciousness, there is neither right and wrong nor good and evil. The consciousness of the universe only truthfully records the data of material cycle, data of life's consciousness, and activities in the universe. The right or wrong and good or evil of the universe is determined by individual consciousness of life. And the individual consciousness that decides the good or evil is determined by the application of the consciousness of life on material logic. And the right or wrong and good or evil that reflects the application of material logic is determined by the totality of the material cycle. As a result, both arguments of nature is evil and nature is good are wrong. Well, what does Life Changyuan say on the issue of whether we are born into sin or not? We are not born as such. Sin is the result of the incomplete and imperfect social operating mechanisms of human society and is not innate. The root causes of the suffering of human societies for thousands of years lies not with sin, but with the imperfect operating mechanism of human society. If the operating mechanism is complete and perfect, people will not sin, but if the operating mechanism is not good, people may sin. Let's examine whether our conclusion is correct or not. Enkuan Buddha has given us the following example. 6 people live in an apartment with only one toilet, so the use of the toilet becomes a problem which leads to conflicts with unpleasant results. Sin thus comes along. If the conflicts due to the unreasonable limitation of the toilet are resolved, say, by building a second toilet, then they will be lessened, and if we built a third toilet, the conflicts would be minimized even more and the so-called sins would not arise. Therefore, the sin caused by toilet use was not innate, but was from the restrictive design structure of the apartment. If we compare sin to flies, we have to ask where flies come from. If we go to a place with a clean and beautiful environment, we see hardly any of them, but if we go to a relatively dirty and messy environment, we will see many flies. This is true. Actions speak louder than words. The fact has proven that flies do not come from nowhere, but from unclean environments. In Chinese history, there were many instances of peasant uprisings, including the revolution of Chinese workers and peasants under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. What led to that? Did the peasants and workers naturally want to revolt and rebel? Absolutely not. Uprisings and revolutions are caused by bad social operating mechanisms. If the social operating mechanisms are good, especially if the distribution of the means of production is reasonable, there will not be any rebellions or revolutions. The corruption in the Singapore government is less than in the Chinese government. Could it be that Chinese officials have innately corrupt hearts? No. There is something wrong with the government's operating mechanism. There is anger and there are conflicts between wives and husbands, and sometimes there are the phenomena of affairs outside of marriage, or bigamy, and so on. Could it be that people are born to be angry and to have conflicts with each other? No. They are the results of the survival mechanism, marriage mechanism, and family mechanism. If there were no marriage, then there would be no family operating mechanism, and these phenomena could have been avoided. The world's population is now reaching 6.8 billion, right? This enormous population is drastically depleting our natural resources. The pollution of air, water, and all the natural resources on Earth is a testament to our overpopulation. Fierce competition and a series of overt and covert conflicts result, upsetting people both day and night. What are the reasons? The reasons are because there is something wrong with the social operating systems. It is not that people are sinned, not at all. In short, man is not born sinned. There is the saying of forcing young girls of good families to prostitute themselves and forcing boys to join the rebels. Who forces? It is the social operating mechanism that forces. As I have said before, the core crisis of mankind is the crisis of the soul. Well then, I am now saying that man is not born from sin. The sin is caused by bad social operating mechanisms. Are they contradictory? Are the Chanyuan values themselves creating paradoxes? No and no. Good social operating mechanisms need to be built by people with beautiful souls. Without beautiful souls, good social operating mechanisms can never be built. So the construction of the soul is the first requirement, but beautiful souls are not enough. We must construct a good social operating mechanism with beautiful souls. Otherwise, the beautiful souls will not be sustained for very long. This is more like the love between men and women. At first, everything goes fine, but if they do not build operating mechanisms to reinforce their original intentions, conflicts will soon develop which will either lead to their breaking up or to their struggling in pain for a lifetime. All religions, including Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, and others, have problems on establishing good social operating mechanisms. All the various cultivation groups, including the Indian ones, the Chinese ones, recent spiritual practice groups in the West, and others have ignored the establishment and construction of good social operating mechanisms. All political parties, especially the Communist Party organizations under the guidance of Marxism, are working hard to build better social operating mechanisms, but they neglect the greatest creator and the construction of the human soul. If political party organizations neglect the greatest creator and the human soul, they cannot build good social operating mechanisms, despite how hard they might try. If religious organizations ignore the building of good social operating mechanisms, then regardless of what they claim, whether it is the reappearance of Jesus, the reincarnation of Maitreya, deity celestial beings descending to earth, the reappearance of Dharmakakra, or threats such as impending catastrophes or the apocalypse, are useless and unhelpful to the world. If cults conjure up their spirits and deities, describe fortunes and disasters, and escapes from reality, lead befuddled lives as if drunk or in a dream, study sorcery and witchcraft, and play with spells, their members could never become celestial beings or Buddha or get away from the 6 worlds of reincarnation. For them to even re-emerge human, an afterlife would be very difficult. If you sinned in your previous life, then you have been punished. If your ancestors sinned, they had to bear it. But that has nothing to do with you. A king's children may not be kings or queens. A thief's children need not necessarily be thieves. Man is not born into sin. Whether we are sinned or not depends on whether we revere nature, revere life, revere the greatest creator, and whether we take on the way of the greatest creator.